Welcome to the Epcotian Adventure,
a podcast where we'll talk about all things Disney,
including tips and tricks, festivals and favorites, and the very latest news and reviews.
But we're still old enough to remember when taking pictures was making memories.
This is episode 4, How to Plan a Weekend Trip to Epcot.
Or, Epcot with no PTO? I'm in.
So now, please remain seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast as we embark on our Epcotian Adventure. Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 4 of the Epcotian Adventure. I'm Rod.
And I'm Sue.
And today we're going to talk about how to plan a weekend trip to Epcot on a budget.
Exactly. So let's start off by talking about why you might want to do a weekend trip.
Well, because it's Disney World. I mean,
well, how about a weekend trip as opposed to an entire week?
Now that makes sense.
There we go. So first and foremost, let's just dive right in. So in the first episode that we did, we started by promising you that eventually we would give you some tips and tricks about how to plan a trip on a budget. As we have mentioned, we did last year we did several weekend trips to make our season passes pay for themselves, and we managed to make that work from Missouri.
And over the years, I've taken many solo trips out to Disney World. Granted, I did work for the company at the time, but I did manage to find a way to find cheaper flights and cheaper hotel rooms and when to go.
Right. That is the key point that we're going to start with, as a matter of fact. Good segue.
Thank you.
So let's talk about why you would do a trip would be time.
Right. Time of year.
Yeah. Time of year for sure. We do not go during the summer months because we are just not built for Florida humidity.
Yeah, the last time we went in August, I literally melted into a puddle. I ended up in a bin somewhere after custodial came by.
It was like bad. Olaf in the summer.
Exactly.
So a time of year is a big consideration, but also time that you have to spend. So if you don't have a bunch of PTO built up or paid time off from your job, and you just want to spend half a day or you want to spend just one day, those are viable options to do a really fun trip to Disney World.
Exactly. For us, we both have full-time jobs, so we have a limited amount of PTO each year that we can put towards our Disney World trips, along with family time and other things that are more important. So
right.
It comes down also what your priority is. If you are looking to do just a weekend trip, we're going to give you some tips and tricks here on how to do that.
Right. So another consideration would be cost. Like you said, we're going to talk about doing a trip on a budget. And also the fact that doing a weekend trip can allow you to do multiple trips in a single year as opposed to one long week.
Exactly. If you're able to take a single PTO day or no PTO days and simply go over a weekend, do a park on a Saturday, maybe even a Sunday if you can get an evening flight home, you've got a lot of extra time saved up to do additional trips later on for other festivals, for instance.
Yes, which is what we like to go for. But you might also pick to go during a time when they're opening a ride that you really want to go on, or they've just made a change to one of your favorite snacks and you want to check it out.
Tron, we're looking at you.
Yes, April is coming.
Yeah, for us, we tend to plan our trips around the Epcot festivals.
Yes.
As we mentioned in the last time, those happen year-round, so we're able to make it work for us in January and May and October and still manage to catch all of the festivals at Epcot.
Yeah, and it's a great time to check out some new stuff. So, yeah, that's a definite factor in when we choose to go. So one of the things that we like to do is to do a Thursday night after work, take Friday off, and then you have Saturday and Sunday. Mm-hmm. Or, on the other end, you leave after work on Friday, have Saturday and Sunday, and take the Monday off. So there's ways to extend your own weekend and only use a day or even a half a day of PTO. And along those lines, let's go ahead and talk about how we get there. So assuming that you're not driving, that's one of the things that we're assuming here, is that you are flying from
somewhere in the
location.
U.S. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's other options. You can take the auto train if you're on the East Coast, but like Sue said, you can drive in. If you're like us and live in the Midwest, or you're on the West Coast or up in the North, most likely you're going to find a cheap airfare, or as cheap as possible. Florida used to be actually known for pretty inexpensive airfares because of competition, but then after the closures, things changed, and that's worldwide airfares really have. But specifically for Florida, the major airlines, American, Delta, United, are not as inexpensive as they used to be.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and MCO used to be where everybody flew into. That's Orlando International Airport. And there are other options that you can look at even.
What? You mean you don't have to
Amazing.
fly into Orlando and hear Mayor Buddy Dyer welcome you to the city?
As much as I love doing that, we've found other options over the last few years that have saved us a lot of money. Not a lot of time, because honestly, Orlando is your best option if you can afford it. And if the flight times and everything work good for you, along with the prices, that's still our number one pick for flying into. However, if you have the option of getting to one of the big hubs, Southwest is a great option. That's who we tend to do, and we'll drive a few hours to save a couple $100 per ticket on Southwest. Or there, if you want to go really low cost, you're looking at Allegiant, Sun Country, Frontier, which are good options for a budget. However, here's my caution to you. Those airlines fly only certain days of the week. Southwest, on the other hand, they fly daily, and multiple flights usually from each location they're flying from daily, whereas Frontier or Allegiant may only have 1 or 2 flights a week from where you live to the Orlando area.
And as simple as that sounds, it really is a huge consideration, because if you miss a flight or if a flight is canceled, you're not looking at being rebooked later that night. You're looking at being rebooked later that week. If you're only going for a weekend, your trip is over.
Yeah, so for us, our number one consideration, besides cost, is the flexibility of the airlines. Now, what that means is we don't book through consolidators. Now, I'm not going to say that Expedia or some of the others that are out there are bad. If you're worried about that, our suggestion is to simply use a travel agent.
And make sure that the travel agent you choose is Disney certified. They do have to go through certain classes to sell Disney trips. And they should say right on their website, or if you just ask them, they'll tell you if they're Disney certified.
Exactly. And Disney does have a entire certification process they do for Disney experts. So a travel agent is one option. I am a closet travel agent. And if you are like me and like to plan your trips yourself, then look on the websites for the different airlines and watch for those sweet spots as far as price, travel time, and the options you have for where to fly from. And believe it or not, fly to. Here's a big tip. Orlando's great. MCO is the airport code for Orlando International Airport. Love it. You get to ride the little people mover monorail thingies before you even get to your car rental.
Or it's the first ride you go on when you get to Florida.
Or mirrors, if you're going to do that. If you're flying one of the low-cost airlines, such as I mentioned, Allegiant, Sun Country, Spirit, Frontier, you have the option of possibly flying into a different airport. For instance, Allegiant flies into PIE, which is St. Petersburg Clearwater International, just across the water from Tampa, TPA, which is another option to fly into on a lot of major airlines. Another one that Allegiant flies into regularly is Sanford. The code there is SFB for Sanford B. I don't know what the B stands for. That's a good question. Never thought about that. I don't know. And they're about an hour's drive. The same as it would be to fly into Tampa or PIE, St. Petersburg. Another one that a lot of companies are starting to fly into now is Melbourne, MLB, over on the coast. And it's, again, about just a little over an hour's drive, but American flies in there. Delta flies in there. Sun Country flies in there.
That's a really good point, because the purpose of flying into Orlando, the major benefit used to be that if you were staying on property, you could take Disney's Magical Express directly to your hotel. Now, that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, I do miss that.
That was so nice. Now, if you don't know, that used to be a free service where they would put you on a bus and take you directly from Orlando International to whatever Disney hotel you were staying at. And now, with that not being an option, why don't you talk about what some of the other options are?
Yeah, there's actually Mears, which is the transportation company that was under contract by Disney for the Magical Express. The buses were actually all Mears, so those ones are still available for a low cost. It's actually about a little over $30 round trip per person.
It's actually a really good deal.
Yeah, and now the Sunshine Express actually is a brand new one that just started as well. And they don't run 24 hours as of the recording of this, but Mears does. Mears also offers taxi service and private car service, which we've actually utilized one time just as a splurge. It was very nice to have somebody with a little sign down there with our name on it. I definitely don't do that all the time. The other options, of course, are rental cars and Uber and Lyft. And there's also minivans are now available again from the airport, which is part of Lyft and can be actually accessed from the Lyft app. And that is actually manned by Disney cast members. And for a little higher cost, will drive you directly from the Orlando International Airport to your hotel room. Rental cars still are all over the place, of course, at Orlando. Not all of them are 24 hours anymore. So that's something that you just need to look at if you have those late night flights. And they're not as inexpensive as they used to be.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So those other options we talked about, like Sanford and Tampa and those other ones, rental cars are going to be about the same price in those locations. So if your intention is doing a rental car anyway, flying into an alternate airport is a very good way to save some money.
And you may be wanting to rent a car anyway for your trip. So if you are thinking about renting a car, you might just look at one of those further out airports, make a little extra drive, and save some money.
I will bring this up. This is the least expensive method of travel, and it's called Turo. It's new. It's basically renting somebody's car. It's Lyft, but you don't have a driver. That's actually new and is available at the Orlando International Airport. It's not for me. I don't like driving other people's vehicles. They can drive me all they want with Lyft or Uber, but not an option, but it is very inexpensive, and that's another something to look at if you're looking on a budget.
Sort of like an Airbnb.
Exactly.
And on that note, let's talk about some places that we might want to stay while we're there.
Yeah, we've stayed on park in quite a few places. Again, we've been traveling to Disney World since the early 80s. And so over the years, we've managed to stay at a whole list of the resorts. First time was the Contemporary.
Well, back when we first stayed there were only 2 options on park. Well, 3 technically.
3. The golf resort was there too.
Right.
That's right.
But Contemporary and the Polynesian were the only 2 resorts that were there when we went the first time.
Yeah, so we've stayed at the Contemporary, the Polynesian. We stayed at Port Orleans Riverside. We actually even did one of the princess rooms. Don't judge me. The fireworks were
It was for
cool.
my birthday.
It was. And it was really, actually, if you're into Disney, it was really magical.
Really neat.
It was beautiful. We've also stayed at the All-Star, the Pop, Century. We just call it the Pop. And the Art of Animation, which are connected resorts. And they're on the Skyliner.
They're on the Skyliner.
Love the Skyliner.
Huge advantage if you are staying on park.
And years ago, we stayed at the Treehouse Villas, I think they're called. Was part of the Institute?
Disney Institute.
Is that what it was way back when? It's now part of Saratoga Springs.
Yes.
And recently, we actually stayed at the Dolphin, which is a Marriott property that's actually part of the Epcot resorts.
So just to break it down a little bit, your choices when you're looking at hotels, you're either going to stay on property, which is one of the Disney-owned hotels, which has Disney transportation available. You can stay off property at one of the Good Neighbor hotels. These are ones that are, Rod will go over some specifics, but they're ones that are close by to the Disney bubble, and they will also offer some of the perks of staying on property, but you can use like your Hilton points, your Marriott points, and then you can also look at more budget-friendly hotels farther into the city. Those won't offer any of those perks or Disney transportation to the parks. So that'll be an option if you are renting a car.
That's true. Now, some of the places to look that are actually on property other than Disney resorts, the Swan and the Dolphin, of course, are part of the Epcot resorts, and those are owned by Marriott. The Bonnet Creek area, which is right off Buena Vista by Disney Springs, and there's Hilton and Marriott are there. Hotel Plaza is just outside of Disney Springs. Matter of fact, one of our favorite ones we've stayed at there is the Hilton Buena Vista Palace.
That's really nice.
Yeah, a beautiful resort. It's a little older, but the towers and the balconies and the food, and it's a Hilton property now, which I adore because we have Hilton points, which is very nice, which helps bring the cost down on these resorts. Also, the brand new area is called Flamingo Crossings. It's over off of the new Toll Road 429 and Western Way, which is the road that connects over to the Coronado area. If we're talking about on property, which we were.
That's definitely one of our favorites.
Yeah, we just discovered that one recently too.
Yeah, the Disney resorts are broken down into deluxe, which are the high-end ones on the monorail loop mostly. A couple that aren't, but mostly on the monorail loop. And then there's the moderates, and then there's the value.
Right.
So if you were talking about a budget-friendly vacation, we're probably going to be talking about those value hotels, which are the All-Star, which is 3 hotels, the sports, music, and movies.
The Pop Century and the Art of Animation, which are together over by Disney Springs and the ESPN Wide World of Sports area. It is actually closest in proximity because of the Skyliner to Disney Hollywood Studios and Epcot.
That's a huge advantage. If you're not renting a car, having that Disney transportation is a big thing. If you are looking at staying off property in one of those Good Neighbor hotels, just make sure that you are aware that buses are an option. However, they are not going to show up every 20 minutes like they do if you're staying at a Disney hotel.
That's a very good point.
You usually have to make a reservation for them at the front desk.
And some of them do
process.
charge. They're not always free.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, Hotel Plaza, those are serviced by an outside company that actually will stop at the specific hotels at Hotel Plaza and then go on to the parks. Those are free, I believe, but they only run at very, very infrequent times.
In our experience, it is almost always worth it to stay on property, especially if you're only doing one of these quick weekend trips. It increases your Disney time because you're going to be surrounded by Disney the entire time you're there, and it gets you just closer, so you're not spending as much travel time in between going to the park and going to your hotel.
And that's a great thing to look at, is if this is a first-time trip, or if you're not a frequent visitor to Walt Disney World, staying at a Disney resort actually makes you feel like you're in the resort and encapsulated within Disney the whole time. Whereas if you stay off property, you're staying in Kissimmee or in Lake Buena Vista or one of these places we just mentioned that is on property, but it still feels like you're in a city.
It feels like you're in a Hilton. It feels like you're in a hotel, not in a Disney environment.
Which isn't bad, but it just depends on what is important to you. Again, what's your priority? If your priority is solely budget, look in Kissimmee off of Highway 192, or look in Lake Buena Vista over off of I-4 and State Route 535. There's a whole big cluster of hotels along there that are way less expensive, but you're not in the Disney bubble. And that, for us, is a big difference in what we're doing and how we feel.
We really value our time inside the Disney sphere. So
for us,
that's a major consideration.
Yeah, especially coming from Disneyland as our background.
Yes.
Where you were in Anaheim, even if you were staying at the Disneyland Hotel, you saw the city everywhere around you. Being in Disney World is a lot more magical in its feel because of the fact that you can stay at a Disney resort.
Yes, exactly. We do everything we can to bring Disney into our lives at home.
We even put a Mickey Mouse shaped landscaping area around the tree in the front yard.
It's true. And I can't remember the last time we ate or drank out of a dish that didn't have a mouse on it.
That's
so
very true. So yeah, we may be an anomaly to you if you're not used to dealing with Disney adults. However, our priorities are more towards the
expanding the magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there is one good option that just opened at the Hotel Plaza called the Drury Plaza Hotel, which is part of the Drury brand. And their hotel prices right now have been consistently under $300, sometimes around $200, and they include a free breakfast and a free dinner.
Now, if you're only going for a weekend, you'll want to consider if you're going to be at your hotel for a dinner.
Yeah, or any meals at that point. If you're literally going for the Epcot festivals, you're probably not eating at your hotels anyway.
Exactly.
But price-wise, that puts it into the range of non-Disney properties or even off-property hotels. Most of the hotels that you're going to look at Disney World will start in the $200 to $300 a night range for the value resorts, depending on the season and depending if it's a weekend or a weekday. Now, if you have the option of having an annual pass, you do get some discounts on those hotels, but otherwise the Disney hotels generally don't get discounted until the off season. So if you're trying to go during summer or spring break or Christmas, you're not going to find your cheaper hotels. Like us, though, like we said, we go in the off season, so we tend to find those deals when they occur. That's how you do it on a budget. If you're staying at Disney and you want to stay in a Disney hotel, wait for the deals to come out.
Yep, and that's probably when you want to be there anyway.
Very good point.
So just remember, if you're trying to make it with less PTO, doing a holiday weekend is not always the best option, because if you have a 3-day weekend, so does everybody else, and they are thinking the exact same thing.
Now, if you do plan on buying Disney tickets, which you're going to need to do if you don't have an annual pass, you're also going to want to look at the possibility of simply doing a one-day, one-park ticket without the park hopper option.
That's a really good point. So assuming you don't have an annual pass, you will need to do admission tickets, and we like to do one park, one day, and without that park hopper because it allows you a chance to focus on one thing. So whatever that thing is that calls you to Disney, it allows you a chance to really enjoy it and not feel like you have to do every single thing.
Right, exactly. And again, it comes down to the big word we've been using, priorities.
Yes.
If your priority is an Epcot festival, a one-day, one-park ticket is perfect for that. Because you come into the festival, you see it, you eat it, you drink it, and you go home. And then a few months later, you can afford to come back. Now, if you have extra PTO or you would like to do a couple of parks, by all means, a two-park, two-day ticket without park hopper is still a very good option to do that.
We've done many times. We always choose Epcot. I think you probably have caught on to that by now, that we're kind of fans.
So
I know, weird.
Epcotian Adventure means Epcot?
We belong there. Right.
It's our home. It literally, when we walk in and under the structure of Spaceship Earth, there's one crack in the concrete where it's not a crack, but where they come together. It feels literally like our 000 zero spot. It's like
it's
the
home.
Center of the universe for us.
It's very strange. It's hard to explain, but when you walk through that point, you just feel like your blood pressure lowers and everything is right with the world.
Yep.
So we always choose Epcot. If we're doing 2 days, it's Epcot and.
Yes.
And that and switches depending on what our priority is. For me, I love to do Epcot and the studios because Star Wars.
Right. I like to do Magic Kingdom still because of the nostalgia factor.
Yes.
So sometimes we have a little bit of a, not argument, but there's some negotiations that go on when it comes to, hey, we could go eat here. Hey, we could go to Oga's.
Right.
Okay. Oga's usually wins out over Skipper Canteen, but
Very
anyway.
true. But you throw in the spring roll cart and it's a whole different argument.
That's exactly right. Now, if you have park hopper, if you have the option of a park hopper in your budget, a 2-day park hopper is actually a good way to do it as well, because many times you can then visit a third park within the 2 days. So again, it all comes down to what your budget is for the tickets.
And it comes down, like we said, to your priorities. I think the main point that we're trying to make with this is that you don't have to do everything. Right. Pick what's important to you, and it's long enough for us to just get a Disney fix, which is, I think, what most people are looking for when they do a weekend.
Last thing to think about on Disney ticketing as well, you're not going to save money on Disney ticketing. That's the one thing that you're going to pay full price on most of the time.
Really good point.
There's a couple ways around that. You can occasionally get a 5% off discount with your Target card, a Target Red card, I believe it is, to buy Disney gift cards. And if you're able to budget that way by buying Disney gift cards, $100 for $95, for instance, you can buy 5 of those and save yourselves $25. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a meal.
And like we said at the beginning of the episode, if you are using a Disney certified travel agent, they are sometimes privy to some discounts that they can offer you. But that is only going through the certified Disney travel agents. Please don't get random discounts off the internet. Please don't buy tickets in the parking lot.
Do not buy tickets from any of the consolidators that you see on 192, or if you're coming in on the Turnpike, you're going to see signs that say, half price Disney. Do not do it.
Please, please, please. We cannot stress that enough.
Run fast, run far, because I guarantee you they are going to be a timeshare scam.
Yep. And you don't want to spend your entire weekend in a presentation.
Yeah, there's only one reseller I know of. I have not used them before, so I am not vouching for them, but Undercover Tourist.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about them, actually.
They are very well known as being a very reputable Disney reseller, and they're authorized as a reseller. And they sometimes can save you a few dollars. My suggestion is get the My Disney Experience app, which you really do want to have for a Disney World trip anyway. Buy your tickets through the app when your budget allows. So let's talk about timing.
Yes, I think that is the perfect way to wrap this up. Let's talk about the whole time frame when you buy each piece, because that is really how we do our budgeting. We don't spend all the money at once.
Right, exactly. A great way to budget for a trip, especially if you're going once every 6 months or once a year even. We tend to go maybe every 3 months or 4 months for the festivals. But even then, we don't buy our airfare usually until about 6 to 10 weeks out. That's usually the sweet spot. They start reducing fares for seats they know that are not filled for those flight schedules that they have. And so a lot of times, if you look just after holidays or just after peak periods, you'll see that airfare now 6 to 10 weeks out has been discounted.
While we're on that subject, I have a curveball question for you that I didn't tell you I was going to ask.
Go for it.
I've heard rumors that certain days of the week are better for buying airfare. Have you ever found that to be true?
I have heard that Tuesdays between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., I've heard all kinds of people that claim to be experts that say, look at the cheap fare here on Tuesday. Well, I've also seen airfares that I've priced out on a Sunday night that are cheaper than anything else, and I go to buy them, and 10 minutes later, the fare's changed. Fares are dynamic. They're not going to be the same from moment to moment. As a matter of fact, if you use, here's a good tip, if you're using the same computer to check airfares with multiple airlines, multiple car rental companies, and even hotels, you will find that the fares and the rates start to go up the more you check. Clear your cache. Again, if you're not technical on that, ask your kids. They'll tell you.
Basically, what it means is they know you're looking for a good deal, and when you come back to the site, it will have gone up, and it will encourage you to buy then because you're going to think, oh, it's going to go up again.
Exactly. So
if you clear those cookies out, clear that cache. Clear the cookies,
yes.
It'll fool it into thinking you're coming in new.
Exactly. What I'll do is I'll actually shop on one computer and then purchase on another, and I tend to find that the fares and rates for all those pieces of the puzzle tend to stay lower when I do that. So airfare, 6 to 10 weeks out. Admission tickets we tend to buy at the exact same time because you need to have park reservations along with those tickets. You would hate to buy your airfare and then find out 6 weeks later when you go to buy tickets that the reservations are sold out for the park you're trying to go to.
And if you haven't been to Disney in a while, you do need a reservation to go to a park right now. That may change in the future. That started with COVID. But we'll cover all of that in a future episode as well. But just know that you do need a park reservation to go into the parks.
And that at this point is unique to Disney. They are the last of the theme park companies that are still requiring a reservation. Universal, SeaWorld, Legoland are fine to just walk up and buy a ticket. So we buy our tickets with the airfare at the same time. Then usually about 4 weeks out, I'll start repricing out our rental cars. So rental cars, hotels, transportation, if you're doing mirrors. A lot of times you can price them and then purchase them about 4 weeks out. The nice thing with hotels and rental cars is you can go ahead and book them at the time that you book your flights because you enter your flight numbers and all that at the same time a lot of times. But reshop them every week. Go back in and look for the sales that start to appear, especially if you're staying off property and you're staying at a Hilton or Marriott or a Holiday Inn or something like that. They'll start to run promotions and sales, and you can rebook the same room, sometimes for hundreds cheaper.
You've gotten some really good deals for us a lot of times in the past by doing that, and I don't think people know that that's an option.
So in a nutshell, that's how we plan our weekend trips on a budget to Walt Disney World and Epcot.
Always Epcot.
Always Epcot.
So let us know if we missed anything, if there's tips and tricks that you use that we didn't touch on. We want to know what they are. So leave those in the comments. And also, if you have any questions, something that we missed that you'd like to know about. To reiterate, we are not travel agents. We are not going to book your trip for you, but just let us know what you'd like to know.
Yeah, we'll give you some of our past history with any of the hotels we mentioned or any of the parks we've been to. So that wraps up episode 4 of the Epcotian Adventure. Thanks for coming along with us on our journey. I'm Rod.
And I'm Sue.
And we'll see you in line.
Bye.